Hi, everybody. Diana here at Heartfelt Creative. Welcome to this week's episode of Good Gadgets. I bet you're wondering why you're seeing Good Gadgets on Sunday, because I normally post this sometime during the week, like Tuesday or Wednesday, so that you have a little something, along the way, along the week. But today's episode of Good Gadgets really is almost a companion piece to something that I was discussing with you all in this week's Sew in Common. And since it posts on Sunday, I wanted Good Gadgets to post today as well, so that you don't have to wait around for this one to come out. And so in Sew in Common this week, we talked about machine embroidery and editing with machine embroidery. And I was talking about the idea of stabilizing our fabric. So in machine embroidery, we know that our stabilizers that we put in our hoops, that stabilizes our stitches. But in order to keep from having puckers and, excuse me just a second, puckers and weird stuff going on with our fabric, we really need to stabilize our fabric as well. And the products I'm going to show you today can be used, I would say, probably even if you're doing hand applique on your sewing machine for sure, applique in your embroidery machine, absolutely. Stabilizing your fabric, really, you can never overstabilize. I was told that, and I believe it to be true. The more I stabilize, the better I stabilize, the happier I am with my projects in the end. So there are 3 products that I'm going to show you today. 2 are very similar, and 1 is completely different. So you all have heard me. Let me grab this from down here. It was too big to put up on the table. You have all heard me speak in other videos or in my workshops. You've heard me speak about Pellon's SF101 Fusible interfacing. They didn't make it for applique and embroidery. It's made for clothing. I've used it for years and years, but it works beautifully when you're trying to stabilize fabric. It's woven. It feels like a really inexpensive, loosely woven cotton, but one side of it has a bumpy side, and that bumpy side is the glue that fuses to your fabric. It's meant for fabric, so it's not going to harm your fabric. It's by the Pellon company, and it's FS101. That FS, you might also know it by Shape Flex. So that's one product I'm going to show you. Then you all know that I adore Kimberbell designs, right? Well, Kimberbell came out with their own lineup of embroidery stabilizers this past year during COVID. And they came out with a few, I guess you would call them specialty products. And one of them is called Fusible backing. You can tell I use this a lot because it's kind of bent and stuff, this roll. Fusible backing. It is, some people will say it's just SF101. It is not, in my opinion. And I've kind of looked at them and used them both really intricately to figure this out. It looks somewhat the same as FS101. Absolutely. It does the same idea. Absolutely. There is glue on the back. Absolutely. With SF101, it's bumpy. You hear that sound? That's bumpy. That's the glue. With the fusible backing, do you see that little bit of glue? There you go. Do you see that little bit of reflection? That's the glue. It's not how smooth that is. That's not the glue, or that's the glue. It's not bumpy. I will say this. I'm going to look at these really closely. Oh yeah, for sure. SF101 is a slightly looser weave than Kimberbell backing. Kimberbell backing has a different feel to it. And I'm not talking about the glue side. I'm talking about the facing side. It has a slightly softer feel to my fingers. It moves the same. I find the Kimberbell backing to be, I don't think it's heavier. I think it is more tightly woven. Whatever base product they chose for this product, I think it is slightly more tightly woven. Let's put it like this. You have a 180 count bed sheet and you have a 300 count bed sheet. They're both soft. You can get in both of them and cuddle them up. They do the same thing, but there's something a little different about that 300 counts, a little softer. It's the tightness of the weave, the number of threads per square inch that makes the difference. That's the difference in these two. And I will tell you, I will always use SF101. You saw me. I purchase it by the bolt because I use it when I stabilize anything that I'm quilting on my embroidery machine. I do it with my applique, everything. But I will say this, if Kimberbell came out with this by the bolt, now they do have it by the roll, but if they came out with it by a bolt, I would buy this by the bolt as well. I really have come to love this product. I just find it smoother, slightly nicer hand. But I'm not going to say I'm going to say all of these products I'm showing you today are favorites. And I'm going to demonstrate all of them, but I want to show them all to you first because I'm kind of waiting for one thing over here to do its magic. And then the third product I'm going to share with you today is called none other than, Terial Magic. Now it says right on here, liquid fabric stabilizer. I didn't know that. I've had this for a long time. This is really great for fabric if you have one of those die cutting machines and you cut out your SVG designs for your applique. That's your thing. Don't go to the other two, go straight to this for that type of thing. I will say that. And that's why I originally bought it for cutting out pre-cut appliques on a machine system that I have. So it is a liquid fabric stabilizer. I am going to demonstrate to you how they tell you to use it and how I prefer to use it for stabilizing fabric for applique. Okay, so is this, yeah, this is still really wet. Okay, but that's all right because we're supposed to dry it with the iron. So let me just, I've got 4 pieces of fabric over here. They're all these little 5x5 squares. I'm going to bring in my ironing mat because all 3 of these products require pressing. And put that over there. All righty, let's flip the camera and bring it in here. Okay, so right here is a square. Well, we're not going to start with the Terial Magic. We're going to wait. We're going to do that one last because that needs to sit just a little bit more. These 2 squares each have a piece of backing on the back, either the Kimberbell Fusible backing or the SF101 Fusible backing. I always like to cut my piece to roughly my size. I don't care, like, so right here, did you see? I was cutting it from an end that already had a little bit taken off. I don't care about that piece. It's not going to end up in my piece, probably because my design will be in here. So I don't mind that that doesn't have stabilizer in it. I just want to bring this. There we go. That's better. That's better. So I don't care about that piece. So I have glue side to the back side of my fabric on each one. And I always start off with pressing from the side with the fusible instead of the fabric side, because your heat goes straight through the fusible and fuses the glue to the back of the fabric. No, well, it certainly helps if I have the iron on. I'm such a goof. Yeah, I didn't have the iron on, so we have to let that heat up a little bit. Let me tell you, let me flip my camera back around. Well, that's doing. Tell you a couple of things about the Terial Magic. Terial Magic's instructions say, spray and soak your fabric. Soak it. Let it sit. Let me put on my magnifiers here because this is really teeny print on the back. Shake bottle in a bowl or sink or sealable bag. Spray your fabric. Make sure there are no dry spots and fabric is saturated, aka soaked. Hang for 10 minutes or until Terial Magic has absorbed into the fabric fibers. If it dries before ironing, lightly spritz with water to dampen. Iron fabric smooth. Terial Magic can be left in a finished project or washed out depending on the effect you want. That's manufacturer's instructions. When you spray with this bottle, boy, does it come out. It soaks your piece right down right quick. So for stabilizing little applique pieces, to me, it's too much. And you're going to see why. Because when you iron that puppy, it is going to be stiff as a board like a piece of paper. Now, if I'm going to put that through a cutting machine, that's what I want. But if I'm stitching in place and then trimming, I don't want it that stiff. So in a class that I took a few weeks ago, there was a Janome educator, because it was a Janome class. He said, get yourself a Mr. bottle. Do you like mine? Iron Maiden. There's my Iron Maiden. I just thought that was so funny. A Mr. bottle, and put your Terial Magic in here, because we all know when this is water or whatever, it comes out as a fine mist. And so I put about this much of my Terial Magic in here, and boy, does it work better. And I will be showing you that in the demo. So if you decide to use Terial Magic for your applique, and I'm going to highly recommend it, get yourself a Mr. bottle with whatever cutesy little pattern you want on it. All right, so I'm going to flip my camera back over because this should be hot now. All right, so this is my piece with SF101. And this type of stabilization does a couple of things for our fabric. It stabilizes the fabric, obviously. It will have a little bit of flakage on the back there. Or that might be glitter, actually. So I've pressed it. It's on there, but I always turn it over and I just give it a press from the top too. Just a quickie press. If I'm over a little bit of my edge or something, I don't bother, because I'm going to end up trimming all of that away. So you can see right now, this folds different. Here's a piece with no stabilization. You can fold it up, flip it, wrinkle it, whatever. This definitely has, like, if I folded this, I'd have to really press it to get a press line in it. But it's still movable. But it is also slightly thicker. So the one thing it does is, let's see, it's hard to see with this camera, but if I put my hand behind it, I don't think you can see it on this camera. Yeah, but if I'm just standing here and I've got it up to the light and I put my hand behind it, I can definitely see through it just a tiny bit. But with the backing on it, no see-through. It's going to cover. So when I like to use this is if I'm going to lay my piece of embroidery down on top of another piece of fabric. So here's, let's say this is my piece of fabric that I'm either using on my sewing machine, I'm sewing by hand, or I'm using in my embroidery machine. And if I just lay this piece down, you can see through it. I know you can't really with the lights too much here, but you can see through this. With the backing on, no see-through. So it protects that other colored fabric from popping through. That's one thing it does. The other thing it does is if you like to do raw edge applique, which I love to do, when you go to cut this out, your edges aren't going to fray quite as much as if you used just a plain piece of fabric. Now, if you want a real frayed look on your raw edge applique, don't do anything to it. Just use it right as it is. Okay. But if you want to control the fray a little bit, some fusible backing SF101 will work really well on that. And it is the same way with the Kimberbell fusible backing. Works the same way. I press it on the back and then I flip it over and I press it on the front. Now, so here's my Kimberbell. Here's my SF101. This has more heft to it. Kimberbell, because of that tighter weave, and by tighter weave, I mean more threads per square inch. This has a little more heft to it than this one does. So if you use this SF101 and you're still getting shadowing through it, try the Kimberbell, because there's nothing coming through there. Okay, so that is why I like to use these two products, especially if I'm going to do a controlled raw edge look and if I'm trying to keep shadowing from going. Now, to be honest, before I ever knew about Terial Magic, I used this on all of my applique pieces, big or small. But for smaller pieces, this does get kind of thick, and I've never really loved that idea, but it's what I knew about. It was what was available. But with Terial Magic, it's not quite the case. So let's put those two aside and let's bring in our piece. So on this piece, I have done what the manufacturer's instructions said. You can even see I've got some damp spots on my wool mat. No problem, it'll dry up. So I just sprayed it, soaked it. It's been sitting about 10 or 15 minutes. Don't do this when you go to press it dry, because I'm going to tell you it's going to stick to the bottom of your iron. I just start out here on an edge piece, because it wants, even though that is nonstick, it really wants to stick there. But once you get it going and get it a little bit pressed, a little bit dry, then you can kind of do the sit, because you want to dry this piece of fabric completely. And you can tell, see, it's dry here, it's still wet over here. So I just move my iron around. I use a hot iron. Getting really close to being done. See, pretty much all dry now. Do you see how that came up? Let's look at our piece with, this is SF101. See how it still has a loose hand to it? Not if I do Terial Magic according to the instructions. I will tell you this, I think that's a little too much for applique. If I'm going to do it on my sewing machine or by hand, even on my embroidery machine, that's a little bit of, that's heavy for me. Heavy is not a good word. It's a little too stiff for me. I'll just say it. It is. It's definitely going to help keep your fray down, though, if you do a raw edge applique. So you might want to do the full treatment if you want to do raw edge. But I have a piece of fabric here that has nothing on it. I'm going to lay it with the pretty side facing down, and I'm going to take my Terial Magic that I have in my mister bottle, and I'm just going to give it a light spray. And I'm not going to let it sit and wait. I'm going to iron it straight away, because it's a very light mist of Terial Magic. I'll lift it up and see, it still has more. That's not moving, right? This still has some movement to it, like it does over here with these other products. But it is definitely, I mean, you can tell It's not just flopping around now, it's stiffer. And I used this in today's Sew in Common video. And I experimented with it because the instructor I had at that event had said, you know, that's what he liked. So this is the piece I'm working on. And on all of these fabric pieces, instead of using the SF101 or the Kimberbell fusible backing, I used this light mister spray technique on my fabric of the Terial Magic. And it turned out really beautifully. Let me set my iron kind of a little bit away so I don't burn myself. Y'all know I'm prone to doing that. So in this piece, this mannequin right here was originally a fill stitch, like the sewing machine is, and the carpet is, and the desk is, and heart, right? I turned this into, in my editing software, I turned it into an applique. And I loved how it turned out. But to prep that small piece, do you see how thick it would have been if I had used a fusible backing on it? It would have worked, it would have been fine, but it would have been thicker there. I used the Terial Magic Mist method on it, and boy, did I love how it turned out. I loved it. All of these fabrics turned out great. Here is the brown that I used. You can still kind of see it has the Terial Magic in it. All of these fabrics have Terial Magic in them, and that method worked really great. The only thing I might have done differently is this center fabric. Did you notice I used the same fabric here as I have behind me on the wall here in the studio? I figured it's my shed. I had to make it match. I still have a little bit more to finish. Oh, and down here, there's going to be a cute little basset hound puppy named Vernon. But anyway, this piece right here, this fabric is fairly see-through. I've got a little piece over here of it. It's easier to see stuff under. If I laid that Terial Magic right there, I bet you could see that through it. Yeah, see, you can see that through it pretty easily. If I had laid that on top of this brown fabric, I would have definitely used either the SF101. In all honesty, I would have used the Kimberbell fusible backing for it to help keep this shadowing from coming through. But the instructions on this piece has you cut this out and then lay this fabric on. So this fabric is only laying on top of fusible fleece, which is pure white. So there's nothing coming through it. So using the Terial Magic Mister method that I now call it, worked out perfectly. So let's look at our pieces just one more time. Here is, there we go. This is our Kimberbell with fusible backing. Love it. If I'm going to do quilting in my embroidery machine, and you all know I do it a lot, piecing and the quilting, I am going to use a fusible backing like this. I'm not going to use the Terial Magic method. I don't get quite the type of stabilization that I want for quilting with that method, but I would use one of these. So that's the Kimberbell. This is the SF101, very, very similar. I mean, the difference is really slight. I'm not telling you to have both. I would tell you to have one or the other of these products in your tool chest for your embroidery, whether it's hand embroidery, sewing machine embroidery, or quilting machine embroidery. And then here are our two pieces with Terial Magic, and you can tell which one is which. This is the lighter Mister method, which is all I need for those tiny applique pieces. And it would also help me control fray a little bit with this at this stage as well, but not as much as this one would. So this is the full Terial Magic treatment, and that's going to help me really cut down on fray if I'm doing raw edge. And it's going to keep things nice and flat. Both of these methods are going to keep things lovely and flat and in place if you're doing any kind of satin stitch or decorative stitches around your applique. So let me flip the camera back. There we go. So Kimberbell fusible backing, SF 101. You don't need to buy it by the bolt. I buy it by the bolt because I use it for quilts and you go through a lot of it. You can buy it in 1 yard packages at, I know Joann's Fabrics has it. Your local fabric shop may have it. I'm sure you can probably order it online as well. But it's Pellon SF 101 Shape Flax is the name, the full name. And then there's the Kimberbell fusible backing. I know that you have to buy this through a Kimberbell dealer, a shop. This isn't sold like through Joann's or Hobby Lobby or anything like that. And I'm not sure that you can get it online unless it's an online shop that is a Kimberbell dealer, okay? But it's worth finding one, okay? In fact, I'm going to give you links here in the description for all of these products. And for the Kimberbell one, I'll give you their website address in there, because when you go there, they have a section that gives you like all the stores throughout the United States. They might even have some in the UK now, not positive, but you could check. And you can, that way you can find one in your state that's close to you. See if they have a website, if they're a little farther than you want to drive. Also, if you live overseas, ask them, if you tell me the shipping, will you, and I pay it, will you ship this to me? If you want this one. And then the Terial, whoops, Terial Magic. There we go, there you can see it. Terial Magic. This bottle is 16 ounces. And if I put this back in it, I would have a little less than half left. And this has lasted me about a year now, maybe a little more than a year now. And then get yourself a Mr. bottle. They come in, you can just go on Amazon and order these in clear or white with no special. You can get special ones from shops that have their logos and their names on them that are all fun. And then I don't know, let's see, quilterscorner.com is the folks that do this one, and they have a few others with quirky little sayings and logos and stuff on them. So that is today's Good Gadgets. If you enjoyed Good Gadgets, or if you enjoy any of my other video series, Sew in Common or the Quilting Library, would you please consider clicking that subscribe button and subscribing to my channel? I'd appreciate it really so much, more than I can say. I'm getting really close to 3,000 subscribers. I'd love to hit that number soon. That would be a real, like, that's like a goal for me. So if you'd help me out, I'd appreciate it. And then if you want to get notified when I add more content, click on the little bell next to the subscribe button, and you can pick, like, do you want to get notified every time I put in content, only for certain types of content? I think there's a few choices there, and you can do that too. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for spending your time with me. As always, I know there are lots of people out there doing similar things with lots of content out there, and you have your choice. And so I am very honored and thankful that you chose to spend a little bit of your time with me. Go out and have a great rest of your week. Check out the Sew in Common video if you're a machine embroiderer, because we talked about editing and some special things that you can do over in that one today. And next week, I'll be back to sewing blocks in that one, because I really want to get my quilt done. So take care, everybody. Go sew life beautiful. Have a great week. Bye now.